And today we'll say about obstetric jaundice, man. So, what is jaundice and where it is derived from? And jaundice is a French word, okay, which means it yellow, okay. So, definition of jaundice, define jaundice. These are the questions that can be asked. So, the answer will be jaundice or icterus is a term used for yellow pigmentation of sclera, skin, and mucous membrane due to deposition of bilirubin. Okay, this deposition of bilirubin in the sclera, skin, and mucous membrane can cause yellow color discoloration. This condition is called as jaundice. So, the normal bilirubin level in the body will be 0.2 to 1 milligram per deciliter. When this bilirubin level in the body is more than 2.5 milligram per deciliter, it causes discoloration of the sclera, and when the serum bilirubin level is more than 6 milligram per deciliter, it causes discoloration of the skin and the mucous membrane. Why this is so? Because the affinity of scleral fibers for bilirubin is more. That is why it gets discolorated at the earlier stage than the other region like skin and mucous membrane. So coming to the bilirubin metabolism, physiology of bilirubin metabolism, the bile contains bile salt, lecithin, cholesterol, and bile pigment. These are the composition of bile. Okay, the composition of bile are bile salt, lecithin, cholesterol, and bile pigment. So what is bile salt? These are further classified as primary bile salt and secondary bile salt. The primary bile salt are cholate and quinodeoxycholate, while the secondary bile salt are deoxycholate and lithocholate. So coming to the anatomy about enterohepatic circulation of bile. The bile released from the liver, produced by the liver, and released into the second part of duodenum through CBD into the ampulla of Vater. This bile enters into the second part of duodenum, jejunum, and then ileum, where it helps in digestion and absorption of the fat and other fat-related substances like vitamins like A, D, E, K, etc. And then after helping in digestion, this bile will get reabsorbed in the terminal ileum. From there, it will get into the portal venous system and then back into the liver. Approximately around 4 gram of bile salt will circulate twice during your each meal, man. Okay, approximately around 2.5 to 4 gram of bile salt will get circulated twice during our each meal. Okay. So coming to the physiology, bilirubin metabolism, the senescent erythroid RBCs, I mean the age-old RBCs, which is more than 120 days, will get hemolyzed and will release heme. Okay, this heme by mononuclear phagocytic cells with the help of the enzyme heme oxygenase, this heme will get converted into biliverdin. Biliverdin is a green color pigmented substance. Okay, green in color. This biliverdin is getting converted into bilirubin by biliverdin reductase. This bilirubin gets conjugated with albumin and then released into the blood, which enters into the liver, into the hepatocytes, where glucuronidation takes place. It is a type of detoxification of the bilirubin complex. Glucuronidation of the bilirubin takes place. So this can also be called as conjugation. Okay, conjugation occurs in the liver. The unconjugated bilirubin enters into the liver and gets conjugated, and this conjugated bilirubin is released inside the bile duct, from bile duct to second part of duodenum and then jejunum and ileum, and then it enters into the cecum, ascending colon, descending colon. Okay, so this bilirubin is responsible for the yellowish discoloration of the feces, and it is getting excreted out through the stools. Okay, this is the physiological metabolism. The heme released by the hemolysis of the RBCs getting converted into biliverdin with the help of heme oxygenase enzyme inside the phagocytic cells This biliverdin is a green colored pigmented substance which is converted into bilirubin by biliverdin reductase. This bilirubin gets conjugated with the albumin and then enters into the liver, that is hepatocytes, where glucuronidation occurs. There is conjugation of bilirubin occurs, and this bilirubin glucuronides is released into the duodenum, jejunum, and ileum, which is then enter into the ascending colon, descending colon, and gets excreted through the stools. Okay. So, what is jaundice? Anything that increases the bilirubin level in the blood can cause jaundice. So, the normal physiological mechanism is that it will be excreted out. Any process, it can be divided into pre-hepatic causes of jaundice. There is pre-hepatic jaundice, hepatic jaundice, and post-hepatic jaundice. The most common cause for pre-hepatic jaundice is hemolysis, that is increased production of bilirubin by hemolysis. So it is also called as hemolytic jaundice. Okay, any defect in the liver or hepatocytes, any liver disease like cirrhosis can cause dysfunction of liver. This affects the glucuronidation process and conjugation process, and this can also lead to increased bilirubin in the blood, unconjugated bilirubin in the blood. Okay, this called as hepatic jaundice, and even after glucuronidation or conjugation, the liver excretes the bilirubin into the bile circulation, and anything causes obstruction of this bile released from the liver can cause post-hepatic or obstructive jaundice. So, etiology of jaundice varies. If it is due to any factors causing increased hemolysis like sickle cell anemia or even some toxicity, blood toxicity, even snake bite can also cause increased hemolysis. Okay, this is called hemolytic anemia, and this is due to the medicine cause. Okay, actually it is due to medicine cause. So, treating the cause will cure the disease of bilirubin. Okay, and of course the liver cell failure and the liver dysfunction is also a medicine cause initially. And thereafter it can be treated by liver transplant by a surgeon. So this hepatic jaundice will also be dealt well in medicine. So the important concern of surgeon is that post-hepatic or obstructive jaundice. So anything causing mechanical obstruction to the biliary pathway can cause accumulation of bilirubin, further causing the jaundice. So here we will be dealing about obstructive jaundice per se. So initially you will see some basic difference about the three types of jaundice. This hemolytic jaundice can also be named as pre-hepatic jaundice. This hepatic and obstructive also called as post-hepatic jaundice. This hemolytic jaundice is common in individuals like sickle cell anemia or any poisoning that causes increased hemolysis. While hepatic jaundice can occur in younger age or middle age, can be due to any congenital abnormality like primary sclerosing cholangitis or even alcohol-related liver diseases, etc. In obstructive jaundice is usually in older age because the etiology may be a stone formation which takes a long period of time. Of course, it can also occur in the middle age, the stones, but the stones that the significant size to cause obstruction can occur in old age, and of course, malignancy can also occur in old age. So, obstructive jaundice is more common in older age compared to other ages. Of course, it can occur in younger age and the middle age also, like something like a choledochal cyst, congenital choledochal cyst, etc. can also cause obstructive jaundice. Okay, here in case of clinical features in hemolytic jaundice, there will be no abdominal pain because there is no problem in the abdomen per se. It is due to the excess hemolysis. In hepatic jaundice, there can be an abdominal pain in initial stages. In initial stage of cirrhosis, there can be pain, and post-cirrhotic liver, there won't be any pain. But in case of obstructive jaundice, here the liver is normal, but there is obstruction in the flow by this causes pain in abdomen. So pain in the abdomen is a feature of obstructive jaundice. Okay, the color of the urine will be dark yellow in color in obstructive jaundice because bilirubin is produced, but it is not excreted through GIT. It is not excreted through GIT. So a little amount of bilirubin will be excreted through urine. This causes yellow discoloration, dark yellow discoloration of the urine. Of course, it will be mild yellow in case of hepatic jaundice, but there will be no discoloration of urine in the hemolytic jaundice because it is not being excreted down itself. So color of the stool will be normal in case of hemolytic jaundice and hepatic jaundice, that there will be clay colored stools in case of obstructive jaundice because there is no release of bilirubin inside the GIT. Pruritus will be present in case of obstructive jaundice because the bilirubin level will be very high in case of obstructive jaundice. And icterus, the nature of the icterus will be lemon yellow in case of hemolytic jaundice, and it will be yellow in hepatic jaundice, and the greenish or dark yellow in obstructive jaundice because this is due to this lemon yellow is due to unconjugated bilirubin. Okay, bilirubin albumin complex. Well, this yellow is due to conjugated bilirubin. Okay, conjugated bilirubin, and here this is also due to conjugated bilirubin in high quantity. Okay, so here in hemolytic jaundice the liver will be normal. In hepatic and obstructive jaundice, liver will be affected. Of course, in hepatic jaundice it is due to the liver pathology. In obstructive jaundice, that may be a reflex of the bile. This can cause dilatation of the intrahepatic biliary radicals, and of course liver injury can occur. So liver will be affected in case of hepatic and obstructive jaundice, and the liver will be palpable here. That is, hepatomegaly will be present in both cases. The hepatomegaly can also occur in hemolytic jaundice at later stages. And gallbladder will not be palpable in case of prehepatic or hepatic jaundice, but it will be palpable in obstructive jaundice because in obstructive jaundice there will be a reflux of bile that gets collected in the gallbladder. This can lead to gallbladder enlargement also, leading to palpable gallbladder. Coming to serum bilirubin, in hemolytic jaundice it will be elevated to 4 to 5 milligram per deciliter. As we already know about the normal level of serum bilirubin is 0.2 to 1 milligram per deciliter. The important thing to note is that in hemolytic jaundice there will be an increase in indirect bilirubin level because no conjugation occurs. Okay. In hepatic jaundice also there will be increase in indirect bilirubin than the direct bilirubin. Okay, there will be an increase in indirect bilirubin because conjugation is not occurring here because liver is a defect in liver, so conjugation will be affected. Okay, here in hemolytic jaundice the bilirubin does not even enter. That's the excess of bilirubin here. Though conjugation occurs, the excess of bilirubin will also be there. So here both the direct and indirect component can increase. Direct and indirect component can increase here. When the bilirubin level is beyond the threshold level, then the indirect bilirubin will increase. Okay, there will be more amount of bilirubin, indirect bilirubin that gets conjugated. Okay, that gets conjugated. So the direct bilirubin will also increase, and indirect bilirubin will also increase. If the indirect bilirubin level is reaching beyond the threshold of the liver, then the indirect will increase more than that of direct. Okay, so coming to obstructive jaundice, the direct bilirubin will increase while indirect bilirubin level will be normal because conjugation occurs but it is not being excreted. Okay, so coming to the liver enzymes like SGOT and PT will be elevated in case of hemolytic jaundice while it will be very much elevated in case of hepatic jaundice. This is because these are the marker of liver injuries. Because in hemolytic jaundice there will be increased working of liver. Okay, in hepatic jaundice liver itself is problematic. So there will be marked elevation in hepatic jaundice while it can be normal initially and it can be elevated in later stages because of obstruction and reflex injury to the liver. And alkaline phosphatase, which is not a very sensitive enzyme in liver because it also increases in bone pathology also, will get more elevated in case of obstructive jaundice. While serum protein will be decreased in hepatic jaundice because the important function of liver is protein production. As the liver itself is problematic or diseased, it causes decrease in the serum protein in case of hepatic jaundice. So coming to the obstructive jaundice per se, the cause for obstructive jaundice can be classified based on the anatomical site of obstruction. The most common sites of obstruction are common bile duct, and the common cause is common bile duct stone. And the second most common is periampullary carcinoma. Periampullary carcinoma means structures around the ampulla of water. Of these, The most common is carcinoma head of pancreas. The carcinoma head of pancreas. Even the carcinoma of bile duct and cholangiocarcinoma can also be considered as periampullary carcinoma. Of this periampullary carcinoma, the most common cause for obstructive jaundice is CA head of pancreas, that is head of pancreas carcinoma. The periampullary carcinoma includes, of course, malignancy of head of pancreas and malignancy of ampulla of Vater, okay, and lower end of CBD malignancy and duodenal malignancy even. So periampulla constitutes, there is a structures around the ampulla are head of pancreas, ampulla of Vater, lower end of CBD and duodenum. So here you can see the most common cause for obstructive jaundice is gallstones, and then comes the CA head of pancreas, then comes the biliary strictures. The stricture can be a benign stricture or malignant stricture. Sometimes liver abscess can have pressure effect on the biliary tract, and pseudopancreatic cyst, cholangiocarcinoma, and periampullary carcinoma, and last comes the choledochal cyst. These are the other causes of obstructive jaundice. Okay. So coming to the hepatic duct causes, based on the anatomy, we can there are various factors causing obstruction, like common bile duct. Now we'll be seeing about the causes of obstruction hepatic duct. Okay, we have two hepatic ducts, right and left hepatic duct, and carcinoma arising from hepatic duct like cholangiocarcinoma. This can involve the hepatic duct bifurcation. Okay, like Klatskin's tumor. Klatskin tumor can occur at the hepatic duct bifurcation, and this can cause obstruction of the hepatic duct. And of course, the portal lymph nodes that is present inside the Calloch triangle, in case of lymphoma metastasis, can enlarge. This enlargement of lymph node can have an extrinsic compression, can compress the duct from the outside, can compress the common hepatic duct from outside. That is extrinsic pressure, pressure. This causes obstruction. So coming to the common bile duct, the common bile duct obstruction can be due to the common bile duct stone or stricture. In fact, gallbladder carcinoma can also compress the common bile duct and cause obstruction. Of course, similarly, the choledochal cyst can compress the common bile duct and cause obstruction. And the obstruction by parasites like Ascaris lumbricoides and Gonorrhea sinuses, and of course, Merogen syndrome. Here, the stone will be there located in the Hartmann's pouch that causes pressure effect on the common bile duct. Here in Merogen syndrome, this is a gallstone disease where the stone will be present in the cystic duct or Hartmann's pouch that causes compression of the common bile duct. So these are the causes of common bile duct obstruction that can lead to obstructive jaundice. So coming to the pancreatic causes of obstructive jaundice, the periampullary carcinoma, carcinoma head of pancreas, and pseudocyst of pancreas that can cause extrinsic compression. The pseudocyst of pancreas arising from the head or neck can compress the common bile duct or can compress the opening at the ampulla of Vater. Opening of the CBD in the ampulla of Vater, this causes obstruction of the bile flow. So coming to the pathophysiology, as we all know, just to refresh, it is due to the blockage of the flow of bile out of the liver. Is any factor or any condition that causes blockage of the flow of bile out of the liver can cause obstructive jaundice. Of course, this can also result in overflow or reflux of the bile into the liver and can cause intrahepatic biliary radical dilatation. Furthermore, reflux can cause entry of the conjugated bile into the blood. Okay, this results in incomplete excretion of the bile. Okay, this leads to jaundice. So you should know about the functions of liver, man. Okay, this is protein synthesis, reticular endothelial function, and of course detoxification, like other metabolisms, and collagen for the coagulation products like coagulation defects can also occur because most of the proteins like clotting factors are produced in the liver And also, the bile is essential for absorption of the fat and fat-soluble vitamins. Okay, these are the things that causes. These are the things that gets affected in case of obstructive jaundice. Okay, so coming to the history. Okay, we'll talk a little about the practical aspect of the obstructive jaundice. Age is more important. As I said that obstructive jaundice is common at older age, and it is initially not associated with abdomen pain. Okay, but in later stages, it can cause abdomen pain. Fever can be present in case of cholangitis. In case of cholangitis, that is inflammation. This obstruction causes reflux of bile, and this can also cause inflammation. If inflammation is present, patient will have fever, vomiting, and jaundice. These three are the features of cholangitis. Okay, they are fever, vomiting, and jaundice with abdomen pain. And of course, the history of color of urine is more important, and history of color of stool is important, and history of pruritus is also important, because pruritus can occur in two conditions. In any liver cell failure also pruritus can occur. It is in hepatic jaundice. Okay, liver cell failure can also cause pruritus, and deposition of bilirubin in the cells, in the skins, in the dermal cells can also cause pruritus. And of course, because of increased bilirubin, there will be anorexia, nausea, vomiting, and because of this nausea, vomiting, patient can have weight loss. Also, because of, in case of CA causing obstructive jaundice, because of cancer cachexia, patient can manifest with weight loss. So, icterus, why it is dark yellow? This dark yellow can be a greenish tinge because of biliverdin present along with bilirubin. This greenish tinge is due to biliverdin. Okay, this can manifest as dark yellow in color. Jaundice can be present in two forms. It can be a fluctuant jaundice. The bilirubin level can fluctuate in the blood, and this fluctuation occurs seen in case of CBD stones and ampullary growth. CBD stones and ampullary growth can cause fluctuation of jaundice. Okay, because in case of ampullary growth, there may be leak of bilirubin sometimes because of relaxo sphincter. This causes lowering of serum bilirubin. In later stages, there may be obstruction followed by relaxation. And of course, in case of CBD stones, the stones can get down into the ampulla, or it can even go into the duodenum, or it can go into the pancreatic duct even. So this causes relaxation of serum bilirubin level. Okay, there may be a progressive jaundice in case of malignant obstruction. Okay, like head of pancreas. Initially, as the size of the tumor increases, the level of obstruction will also increase. In initial, when for example, when the tumor size is 2 cm, the obstruction can be 10%. And when the tumor size is 4 cm, the obstruction can be 40%. When the tumor size increases to 10 cm, there will be complete obstruction. This will cause progressive jaundice. Of course, there will be hepatomegaly present, because in obstructive jaundice there may be a reflux of bilirubin. This causes increased liver size. This image shows yellowish discoloration of the sclera. This is how you should examine the sclera. You should see in the upper palpebral conjunctiva. Okay. So the important law to be noted in case of obstructive jaundice is Courvoisier's law. Here, Courvoisier's law, I will just explain it in my own words. It is just in case of patient with jaundice, if gallbladder is enlarged, if there is a palpable gallbladder, it is not because of stones. Okay, if in case of jaundice patients, if gallbladder is enlarged, it is not because of stones. Okay, this is because the gallstones will be increasing in size. That will be initially small in size, and it will keep on increasing in size. This can cause gallstone disease can cause chronic cholecystitis, that is inflammation of gallbladder. Because of this chronic cholecystitis, the gallbladder will get shrunken in size. So usually it will not be palpable in case of gallstone disease. So let me read out the Courvoisier's law. The words should not be changed in case of laws. Okay, a non-tender palpable gallbladder in a jaundice patient is normally not due to stone obstructing the bile duct. Okay, non-tender palpable gallbladder. Okay, in patients with jaundice presenting on clinical examination, if gallbladder is palpable, it is not because of stones, because gallstone disease can cause chronic cholecystitis, and this chronic inflammation can cause fibrosis and shrunken size of the gallbladder. In case of initial inflammation of gallbladder, there will be a edema, there will be a increase in size. But on chronic inflammation, there will be a decrease in size because of fibrosis. Okay. So other causes are carcinoma, head of pancreas, and periapulary carcinoma. There are some exceptions for Courvoisier's law. If the stone is at the ample of water, this causes increased accumulation of the bile inside the gallbladder and can cause gallbladder enlargement, that is palpable gallbladder, and Meredith syndrome, and the stone in the Hartmann's pouch, causing extrinsic compression of the common bile duct that leads to jaundice. There is no chronic cholecystitis in case of Meredith syndrome. This jaundice is because of obstruction. So here the gallbladder will be palpable. These are the exception for Courvoisier's law. That is double impaction of stones. Stone present in cystic duct and common bile duct, and the stone at ample of water, oriental cholangiohepatitis and hepatitis, inflammation of the liver itself, Meredith syndrome are the exception of Courvoisier's law. And again I will just tell about it. This is the explanation given. The gallstone disease can cause recurrent cholecystitis. This recurrent inflammation can cause shrunken and fibrous gallbladder. Okay. Coming to the investigation part, after the mainstay of investigation is serum bilirubin in case of jaundice. In surgical jaundice, that is obstructive jaundice, there will be an increased level of direct bilirubin, that is conjugated bilirubin will be increased. Usually in case of, if the obstruction is due to common bile duct stone, the serum bilirubin level will be less than 10 mg per deciliter. In case of malignancy causing obstruction, the serum bilirubin level will be more than 10 mg per deciliter. Okay, and the maximum threshold of serum bilirubin in the blood can be 25 to 30 mg per deciliter. This is an MCQ for NEET. The maximum total bilirubin level in the blood can never exceed beyond 30 mg per deciliter, because anything beyond the 25 to 30 mg per deciliter will be excreted in the urine. Okay, so we will go for liver function test, which includes total bilirubin, which is a sum up of direct and indirect bilirubin, and the alkaline transferase, the SGOT, SGPT, and alkaline phosphate. These are the liver enzymes and the markers of liver injury. The SGOT and SGPT normal value will be around 5 to 35 international units per liter. Any increase in the SGOT and PT are significant of liver injury, and this will be increasing only in later stage in case of obstructive jaundice. Okay, and of course, if the liver enzymes are more, as I said already, these are the signs of liver injury, the markers of liver injury. So it is due to the medicine cause. There is a medical disease of liver, like hepatitis, is the cause for jaundice if the SGOT and SGPT are increased more. And as I said before, ALT, that is alkaline transferase or alkaline phosphatase, is not specific for liver. Alkaline phosphatase is not specific for liver. That ALK is not specific for liver. It can be seen even in case of bone diseases. The most specific for liver is ALT, that is SGPT. SGPT and ALT is the most specific for liver injury, okay, due to any cause. So other examples, like as I said before, serum alkaline phosphatase is not specific for liver. It can also increase in case of bone disease also, and other carcinomas can also cause increase in alkaline phosphatase. CA prostate also causes increase in alkaline phosphatase. So normal level of alkaline phosphatase will be 3 to 30 Ka units per liter or 60 to 300 international units per liter. So this will be increased only in case of obstructive jaundice, not in hepatocellular, that is hepatic jaundice. Okay, if the level is more than 30 Ka, it is due to significant obstruction is present. The SGOT and SGPT will increase in case of liver injury or liver disease. So SGOT and PT will increase. The increased SGOT and PT is suggestive of medical hepatic disease causing jaundice. If ALP, that is alkaline phosphatase, is high, more than 30 Ka units, it is suggestive of obstructive cause. Okay, the increased value was because of increased production. Okay, this is due to the increased production of alkaline phosphatase. Of course, it is not specific thing. It can also get increase in case of intestinal disease, bone disease also. So the other investigation or brain investigation we will be doing are gamma glutamyl transpeptidase, that is GGT, leucine aminopeptidase, and serum 5 nucleotidase. These are more specific for biliary obstruction. GGT elevation is more specific for biliary radical obstruction even. Okay. So, of course, as you all know about the function of liver also helps in protein production with anabolism. So, serum albumin level, serum total protein albumin globulin ratio are to be monitored. So, this can reduce in case of hepatic jaundice or any liver injury. But usually in case of obstructive jaundice, this won't be altered. Okay. But when the bilirubin can alter is that any malignancy causing obstructive jaundice, the serum protein level can be altered. Of course, liver produces the clotting factors, and there are vitamin K different clotting factors are produced inside the liver. So any liver disorder dysfunction can cause defect in the clotting metabolism, can lead to prothrombin time, increased prothrombin time, and INR will also be affected. Okay, the normal INR will be less than 1.5. Anything more than 1.5 means there is a bleeding disorder present in this patient. Prothrombin time is elevated because of the decreased synthesis of vitamin K dependent clotting factors. Why this is so is because vitamin K is a fat soluble vitamin. It gets absorbed along with the fats. This fat absorption is mediated by bile. So coming to the urine examination or urine test, Proth's test is done to detect the conjugated bilirubin level, and of course Hayes test is done to detect the presence of bile salt in the urine, and Fauci's test to detect the bile pigment in the urine. Of course, you have read about the Hayes test and the Fauci's test in your first year. And the absence of urobilinogen in the urine, this causes clay color stools. Okay, stool for occulted blood in case of ampullary malignancy. Any malignancy can lead to increased vasculature to the tumor. This causes bleeding into the GIT. This causes occulted blood. This presents as a blood in the stools, like hematochezia. Okay. So coming to the radiological investigation, the initial investigation of choice will be ultrasound because it is easily available at cheaper mode with a good sensitivity and the reliability and specificity also. Here the ultrasound can be used for detecting the dilatation of the intrahepatic biliary radicle. And of course, common bile duct diameter is also more important. Okay, the normal diameter of the common bile duct is 7 to 8 millimeter. If it is more than 8 millimeter, if the common bile duct is more than 8 millimeter, it is considered to be dilated. And this ultrasound is very sensitive in detecting the gallstones and CBD stones, and it can also detect any masses. Okay. If the mass size is more than 2 centimeter, this can be picked up by the ultrasound. Okay, this can also be used to detect the free fluid in the abdomen, like ascites can be detected with ultrasound on presence of any liver mets. Liver nodules can also be picked up in the ultrasound. So this image is suggested. This is the ultrasound image of gallbladder. You can see the gallstones inside the gallbladder. This is the fundus of the gallbladder, body and neck of the gallbladder. Here comes a cystic duct. You can see the stones inside the gallbladder. So coming to the next modality of investigation, CCT, contrast enhanced computed tomography of abdomen. It has the highest sensitivity and specificity than ultrasound for detecting the bile duct and pancreatic masses. Okay, the ultrasound can pick up the mass of size more than 2 centimeter, but this CCT can pick up the mass of size even 1 to 2 centimeter also. It is also useful in determining the resectability of the carcinoma or mass to find the extent of the mass, whether the mass is resectable. Okay, this can be detected by CCT. It is also used to visualize the course of the bile duct better than the USG. Okay, know this point. It is just better than the USG, but it is not the modality of investigation for detecting the course of the bile duct or understanding bile duct. Okay, so it is used for detecting the level of obstruction. Although ultrasound is better with more sensitivity than CT scan for detecting gallstone, CCT is more sensitive for documenting the CBD. The investigation of choice for detecting the gallstone is ultrasound than CT. But it is also used, CCT can also be used for detecting the gallstones. So this is the image of CCT. Okay. Here you can see the liver. These are the intrahepatic biliary radicals that are getting dilated. This is the inferior surface of the liver. Here it is also. Here you can see these are the kidneys. This is the liver with the enlarged gallbladder. So pancreatic carcinomas are best detected by the contrast enhanced computed tomography. Even a lesion of more than 1 millimeter can be detected by the CCT. Here you can see the gallbladder in the gallbladder fossa. The intrahepatic biliary radicals are dilated. And this is the pancreas. This is the pancreas with a mass in the head of the pancreas. This is the tail of the pancreas, body of the pancreas, neck of the pancreas, and head of the pancreas. You can see the change in the color. There is a heterogeneity changes here. This is the mass of the mass in the head of the pancreas causing extensive compression over the common bile duct. Common bile duct gets compressed. This can cause obstructive jaundice. So other investigations that can be done are barium meal. In barium meal, there will be a reverse 3 sign. Okay. Then hypotonic duodenography can be done. In hypotonic duodenography, there will be a rostron appearance in case of periampullary carcinoma. So clinically, we can classify the obstructive jaundice into 4 types. Okay, clinical classification of obstructive jaundice into 4 types. The type 1 is that there will be complete obstruction of the lumen. There will be a complete obstruction of lumen. Here, this can occur due to the malignancy of head of pancreas, or if the common bile duct is ligated or clipped iatrogenically by a surgeon, or due to cholangiocarcinoma causing complete occlusion of the lumen, and even parenchymal liver disease. Okay, these are the causes for complete obstruction of the biliary tract. Type 2 includes intermittent obstruction. That is the conditions causing intermittent obstruction. Okay, symptoms will be present with biochemical changes, but jaundice can be present or not. May be present or may not be present. Okay, that is fluctuating jaundice will be seen in this case of type 2 obstructive jaundice. This type 2 obstructive jaundice can be caused by choledocholathia, the stone in the CBD, periampullary carcinoma, duodenal diverticola, and choledochlosis and papilloma of the bile duct. intrabiliary parasites, and hemobilia, that is blood inside the bile tract. These are the conditions where there will be a fluctuant jaundice. Okay, there will be intermittent obstruction and release of the pathway. Liver can be obstructed for a few moments of time, and it can be released. This causes fluctuant jaundice. The third type is chronic intermittent obstruction. Okay, there will be chronic intermittent obstruction. This can be due to stricture of the common bile duct, a stenosis of the biliary enteric anastomosis. If the patient has undergone some biliary enteric anastomosis like choledochorogenostomy or choledochorogenostomy, if this anastomosis gets stenosed, this can cause obstruction. Cystic fibrosis, chronic pancreatitis, and stenosis or sphincter of body or other causes for chronic intermittent obstruction. This stricture can be further classified maybe due to the congenital stricture or traumatic one, or due to sclerosing cholangitis or post-radiotherapy induced stricture can also cause this chronic intermittent obstruction. And the other fourth type is the segmental obstruction. That is, one segment of the liver or the biliary radicals present in the one segment of the liver get obstructed. This can be due to the trauma to the liver or sclerosing cholangitis or any intrahepatic abscess or cholangiocarcinoma of the biliary radicals. So, the other modality of investigation, okay, that is endoscopic retrograde cholangiopancreatography. Okay, this can be used as a diagnostic tool, also as a therapeutic tool. Okay, here ERCP is a combination of endoscopy and radiological approach. Okay, this is used when there is a dilatation of the intrahepatic biliary radical with dilated CBD. Okay, if the lower end of the biliary tract contains stones, ERCP can done. This ERCP can be used to visualize the stones. Here, scopy will be passed through the mouth into the esophagus, stomach, and duodenum. In the second part of duodenum, the scope will be passed inside the ample of Vater into the common bile duct and then into the gallbladder, or it can also be introduced into the hepatic duct. Okay, it will be introduced into the hepatic duct, and there you can do some investigation modality, like you can go for a CT scan for detecting any stones present, and it can also you can directly visualize the stones present inside the CBD or gallbladder, and you can also measure the sphincter tone, any laxity present in the sphincter body, or any dilatation in the biliary tract can be visualized. These are the diagnostic benefits of endoscopy resonant cholangiopancreatography, and this can also be used for removing or retrieving the gallstones and placing the stent in case of strictures. A stent can be placed in the ample of Vater so that the CBD is kept dilated so that the stones can pass out easily. These are the therapeutic uses of ERCP. Okay. So, here in ERCP, the endoscope is inserted through the mouth into the duodenum, to the second part of the gallbladder. Just here you can see the scope is introduced into the second part of the duodenum into the ample of Vater. Here the catheter is being introduced inside this is a small catheter that is present within the scope. This small catheter enters into the common bile duct. This is pancreatic duct, this is common bile duct. We can visualize this catheter can be introduced into the common bile duct or into the pancreatic duct also, and there the dye will be injected. Okay, followed by taking a CT image to visualize the stones or any pathology inside the duct or biliary radicals. This is the image of ERCP. The endoscope comes here and it goes into duodenum, and below here there will be a ample of Vater. From there they will the catheter will be introduced into the common bile duct, and duct will be dye will be injected. Here you can see the common bile duct. This is the cystic duct. This is the common hepatic duct. Okay, common hepatic duct. This is right and left common hepatic duct. There are these stones present here. You can see the stones here. This is okay. This image is also quite clear. You can see the endoscope. Catheter is being introduced and dye is being injected. This is the pancreatic duct, common bile duct, cystic duct, and gallbladder. This is common hepatic duct, right and left hepatic duct, and these are the biliary radicals. Okay, here you can see some filling defects in the gallbladder and the cystic duct. In case of sclerosing cholangitis, the features will be shown in case of ERCP, and you can see the multiple stones in the common bile duct. This is an ERCP image showing multiple stones in the common bile duct. That is cholelithiasis. Here ascaris in the CBD. Okay, this is a ERCP image of ascaris in the CBD. You can see the ascaris, long thread-like threadworm present. Here, ERCP can be therapeutic. The worm can be removed through ERCP also. In case of multiple CBD stones, if patient is unfit for surgery, you can go for stenting with ERCP, so that the lumen will be enlarged and the calciums can pass out easily. These are the therapeutic advantage of ERCP. Here you can see the biliary stricture due to cholangiocarcinoma. There is a stricture here. Of course, here you can see some stricture. So, advantages of ERCP are: it is used for visualization of the duodenum to avoid any duodenal obstruction. Okay, and endoscopic sphincterotomy can be done. That is, ample sphincter of bladder is done, right? The sphincterotomy can be done to dilate the sphincter and reduce the sphincter tone to remove these stones. And biopsy can be taken, and voice fluid cytology can be taken by using endoscope ERCP, and stent placement can be done if the patient is unfit for surgery. But it is contraindicated in case of acute pancreatitis and anatomical variation if present. ERCP is contraindicated in case of acute pancreatitis and in case of anatomical variation. Okay, why it is contraindicated in case of acute pancreatitis is that the most important complication of ERCP is pancreatitis. You may not know whether this pancreatitis is due to ERCP or due to pre-existing pancreatitis. Okay, so common complication of the ERCP of pancreatitis, cholangitis, hemorrhage, and sepsis. So the other modality of investigation, the recent advance is that endoscopic ultrasonogram. It is more accurate than the ERCP alone and CT alone. Okay, it can be used for detecting the nature and extent of obstruction. It is very sensitive in determining the resectability, because in case of tumor, we should give a complete clearance of the tumor, and even 2 to 3 centimeter extra normal tissue to be taken. So the extent of tumor is more important. This endoscopic ultrasonogram is very useful and very sensitive in detecting the extent of the tumor and to detect whether it is surgically resectable or not. The sensitivity of endoscopic ultrasound is 98%. It is also useful for taking the ultrasonograph guided FNAC. Here, this also says that the endoscopic ultrasound is useful for identifying the focal mass lesion in the pancreas also. This endoscopic ultrasound is more superior than the CT scan, okay, because it is useful for detecting the tumor even less than 3 centimeter. But compared to the MRCP, the endoscopic ultrasonogram is more specific, okay, in diagnosing the biliary stricture. So the other important thing we will be seeing is that percutaneous cholangiogram, PTC, technique of percutaneous cholangiogram. It is usually done by radiologist under ultrasound guidance. A needle will be injected into the biliary radicals and dye will be injected through the. Okay, the needle will be injected into the dilated intrahepatic biliary radicals. That is that, and dye will be injected in this manner, so that the dye will flow along the direction of bile and the CT image will be taken. Here you can see the dilated common bile duct even. Okay, through this needle, through this needle, not only dye can be injected, but also catheter is introduced. Catheter can be introduced up to the sphincter of body even. That is usually done by radiologist. By ERCP is done by medical gastroenterologist, and PTC is done by radiologist, interventional radiologist. So you can see this images of PTC, percutaneous transhepatic cholangiography. This is used for visualizing the biliary tract by injecting the contrast material into the bile duct directly. So the indication for percutaneous transhepatic cholangiography are dilated intrahepatic biliary radicles. Okay, but CBD is not dilated here. If the CBD is not dilated, ERCP catheter cannot pass through it. So we will be going for PTC. The contraindication for PTC, the percutaneous transhepatic cholangiography, is coagulopathy. In this case of coagulopathy, if patient is submitted for PTC, there will be excess bleeding will be present. And of course, ascites is also an important contraindication for PTC. Okay. The other complications of PTC are bleeding from the bile tract. So injuring the biliary radicals can cause bile leak and can cause biliary peritonitis even. Of course, hemobilia and cholangitis can also occur. So the PTC and ERCP are not contradictory to each other. They are supplementary investigation. In PTC, the dye will be injected from the biliary radicals into the CBD. Here, in ERCP, dye will be injected in the retrograde station. So coming to the other important investigation of MRCP, that is magnetic resonance cholangiopancreatography. This MRI is preferably used for detecting the abnormality in the biliary tract anatomy. Okay, anatomical variations can be easily picked out by MRCP. That is magnetic resonance cholangiopancreatography. Here, there is nothing but MRI with contrast. Here the contrast is bile itself. No exogenous contrast is injected. Here, the images are taken as T2 weighted images. Here in radiology, we will be dealing about T1 weighted, T2 weighted images based on the water molecules present. Okay, so the advantages of MRCP are it is a non-invasive investigation, and there is no contrast media is required. Here, the bile itself will act as the contrast media. Okay, this is useful for detecting the level of obstruction, and this is the investigation of choice for detecting the anatomical variation of biliary tract. So in this MRCP image, you can see the distal CBD structure. This is distal CBD. This is proximal common bile duct. So you can see the stones. Okay, and this is the image of primary sclerosing cholangitis in MRCP. So coming to the diagnostic approach, if a patient presents with jaundice, initially you should go for physical examination and LFT. And by the biochemical investigation, we will detect whether it is a surgical jaundice, or obstetric jaundice, or other hepatic or not pre-hepatic jaundice. If it is post-hepatic jaundice, you should go for ultrasound to detect whether there is any CBD stone or periampullary carcinoma or any liver mets that causing obstruction. And then you should also see about the intrahepatic biliary radical, whether it is dilated. If dilated, then you should go for common bile duct, whether it is dilated or not dilated. If it is not dilated, you should go for PTC or TCT. If it is dilated, you can go for ERCP plus ECT. Treatment will be surgical or palliative depending upon the resectability of the tumor or depending upon the etiology of the obstruction. The prognosis of the obstructive jaundice is determined by the Fitch score. So, it is not much important, just know the name of Fitch score alone. And the components involved in Fitch score is age of the patient, serum albumin, serum bilirubin, serum alkaline phosphatase, serum creatinine, and total leukocyte count with hematocrit. Okay, so coming to the CBD stone treatment, open cholecystectomy or with CBD exploration, choledochotomy, followed by T-tube drainage is done in case of CBD stone. In case of initially in case of stones, management will be medical management by a medical gastroenterologist, like ERCP mediated treatment. If ERCP fails, if the patient is a medical gastroenterologist unable to pick up the stone, then you can go for intervention radiologist for removing the stone. If both they are unable to do it, you can go for surgical gastroenterologist, where they will go for, in case of choledocholitriasis, that is, if the stone is present inside the common bile duct, we will go for cholecystectomy, open cholecystectomy, followed by CBD exploration for removing the stone, and a T tube will be inserted inside the common hepatic duct and the common bile duct. The T-shaped tube will be inserted there. It is called a T tube. The one end of the tube will be inside the common hepatic duct, and other end will be towards the sphincter of Bode, and the other T limb will be kept outside, so that the bile will drain outside. Okay, so the stones, if present, it can come outside. So the advantage of T tube drainage is that it can be used for doing PTC. Instead of inserting the needle inside the liver, through this T tube, we can go for percutaneous transhepatic cholangiography to detect any retained stones is present or not. If there is no retained stone, this T tube can be removed easily. Okay. If it is easily can be taken up by the ERCP. ERCP can be done, and sphincterotomy can be done. There can be an incision made over the sphincter to make the sphincter relax, and the stent will be placed so that the lumen gets opened up and the stones can pass out. Okay, this will be the treatment for CBD stones. In case the obstetric jaundice is because of periampullary carcinoma, that is, or head of pancreas carcinoma, here we need some extra investigation to detect whether it is a resectable or non-resectable tumor. If the tumor is not resectable, we will go for palliative chemotherapy and radiotherapy, and palliative treatment will be done for this patient. If the tumor is resectable, that is, if the tumor is surgically excisable fully, then you can go for curative surgeries. Okay, the most commonly performed surgery are Whipple's surgery, Whipple's procedure, and triple bypass procedure can also be done. Okay, here resection of the distal stomach, gallbladder, whole of the bile duct with head of the pancreas. The Whipple's procedure includes resection of the distal stomach, distal gastrectomy, cholecystectomy, followed by hepatico-jejunostomy, along with removal of regional nodes. So, hope you can understand. The distal stomach will be removed, gallbladder will be removed. Okay, along with the head of the pancreas, gallbladder, common bile duct, along with the head of the pancreas will be removed, and the distal stomach will be removed up to the pylorus. Okay, here the anastomosis will be done with pancreatico-jejunostomy. The pancreatic duct will be anastomosed with the jejunum, and then we will go for hepatico-jejunostomy. The hepatic duct will be anastomosed with the jejunum, and of course gastrojejunostomy will also be done for completing the connectivity. The other treatment option will be, other surgical option will be pylorus preserving pancreatico-jejunostomy. Here gastrectomy is not done. Instead of gastrectomy, only the cholecystectomy along with CBD removal and head of pancreas alone is removed, and the pancreatico-duodenostomy will be done, and hepatico-jejunostomy will be done. So pancreatico-duodenostomy means pancreatic enzyme will be released inside the duodenum, and the bile will be released inside the jejunum. So Whipple's surgery is a highly morbid surgery. Okay, open Whipple's surgery. Nowadays even laparoscopy Whipple's surgery is done. Approximate time taken for the surgery is, so by pressure it will take around 8 hours. Maybe the experienced person can complete the surgery by 4 hours. Okay, the mortality will be 40% in case of inexperienced surgeon, because this involves a major act of surgery. Distal gastrectomy followed by a cholecystectomy, and also finding the pancreatic duct itself will be a difficult process. To find the pancreatic duct, you should anastomose the small pancreatic duct with the jejunum, and of course, you should find the common bile duct. You should anastomose the common bile duct with the jejunum. There should be no leakage, and the anastomosis should be very clear, and there will be many common duodenal arteries can come over there, and hepatic artery, duodenocolic arteries, the gastroduodenal artery can cross your region. Any injury to these arteries and vessels can lead to excessive hemorrhage, and even patient can die on table. So there is a 40% mortality in case of operating in an inexperienced hand. But while the surgeon is experienced, of course, the surgery is done well, the mortality reduces by 5%. Okay, so the common complications includes hemorrhage, as I said already, and pancreatic fistula and biliary fistula can also occur. So, in case of non-resectable tumors, if the tumor is not resectable, we will go for palliation, okay, palliative treatment. The non-surgical palliative treatment are percutaneous stenting or ESCP followed by metal stenting. Stenting can be done so that the bile can be released, so jaundice alone will reduce. If the perioperative carcinoma, head of pancreas carcinoma is not operable, you can just place the stent by ESCP so that the bile does not get collected, so the jaundice will not occur, but the tumor will be there for the patient. Okay. In case of patient presenting with GO, this gastric outlet obstruction, you can go for anterior gastrojejunostomy. Okay, as a drainage procedure. So jejunum will be anastomosed with the anterior wall of stomach, so that the food particles will get into the jejunum directly. Like surgical palliation can be done by cholecystojejunostomy, single bypass surgery. Jejunum will be anastomosed with the gallbladder. When the obstruction is at the ampulla, that is periampullary carcinoma obstruction, the bile will get flow from the common hepatic duct into the common bile duct. There will be retrograde flow into the cystic duct and the gallbladder. If the anastomosis is done between the gallbladder and the jejunum, the bile from the gallbladder will go into the jejunum, so that there won't be any accumulation of the bile. So the pathway of bile flow will be liver, right and left hepatic duct, common bile duct, and there, because of obstruction, there will be a reflex flow into the cystic duct and then by gallbladder, from gallbladder into the jejunum, cholecystojejunostomy, and double bypass, that is choledochojejunostomy with jejunojejunostomy. This is also called as row 1Y anastomosis. You can clearly see single bypass is cholecystojejunostomy, here choledochojejunostomy. The common bile duct is anastomosed with jejunum, and jejunum will be anastomosed again with jejunum. It is like row 1Y anastomosis to prevent the pressure inside the jejunum. Okay, then triple bypass surgery can also be done. Here we will be going for choledochojejunostomy, that is CVD with the jejunum, and gastrojejunostomy and jejunojejunostomy. Okay, like row 1Y anastomosis will be done here. In case of cholangiocarcinoma, that is bile duct cancer, if it is resectable, we will go for operative surgery. Resection of the involved segment, we row 1Y hepaticojejunostomy. It is nothing but jejunum will be anastomosed with the common hepatic duct, and then jejunojejunostomy will be done. In case of distal bile duct cancer, we will be going for Whipple's procedure, where gastrectomy followed by cholecystectomy with gallbladder resection, and head of the pancreas will also be removed. Okay, so if the tumor is unresectable, then we will go for drainage procedures like stenting. Okay, and of course surgical palliation with row 1Y and hepaticojejunostomy can also be done. So the complication of obstructive jaundice is renal failure. Because of the increased bilirubin that gets deposited in the kidney, it can cause renal failure, and of course there can be some bleeding diastasis because of vitamin K dependent clotting factor deficiency. It can lead to bleeding diastasis, and of course the bile duct accumulation can cause sepsis, as the bile can act as the media for growth of microorganisms. So that completes the short brief lecture of obstructive jaundice. If any doubts, people can call me at any time. So let's end up the session by now. Thank you guys.